All right, I'm Brigid Starkey, and I'm teaching in the political science department. And this process is, I don't have the.
Oh, it's all right, it's not working, so we'll just use the one on the table there.
Oh, good, I feel lucky. I don't have it recorded anyways. This is a very fluid process for me as well. I'm learning something new every hour as I'm working on this, and I just learned a lot in the last hour. I have taught over time a lot of international negotiation, and one of the reasons I love this is because I teach the students not only some theory about international negotiation, but I let them actually negotiate, and I use a simulation product. I'm actually cheating a bit, I realize, as I listen to all this incredible self-authoring that you've done. I'm importing an exercise from off campus. I'm importing an exercise from College Park. And each student basically pays $12.50. It's like a supplemental text. They register online, and the exercise is available online. What I'm doing, it's a perfect course for the winter term, and it's a perfect course to try to deliver in hybrid form. The reason I say it's perfect for the winter term is that you can bite off as much as you can chew, basically, on the topic of international negotiation. For the winter term, I may well leave out, for example, mediation as a special unit that I sometimes do. I may well leave out some of these intractable conflicts. You need basically a whole semester to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We'll leave that out and do a different case, for example. So it can be expanded or contracted to fit with the semester, as long as I can feature this simulation. That's my main goal, because the students react well to it. It's like when you're learning to drive and you get to practice in a simulator, and driver ed teacher says, you, car number 7, you just ran over 3 pedestrians, what are you doing? So this is what we try to do with international negotiation. Look at their messages, their diplomatic messages to one another, and say, that's potentially disastrous what you just said to that country, for a variety of reasons that we're studying. Cross-cultural meanings, the wording is so ambiguous that it could be interpreted to mean anything, et cetera, et cetera. So since I'm cheating, as I'm calling it, and importing a product, what I've discussed with Bob, and what I'm trying to fill out for the winter term is to use some Blackboard tools to complement this exercise, and I'll get to that in a minute. For example, I want the students to be using the wiki to do a collaborative policy paper before the negotiations start. And I want them, at the end of the negotiation process, I want to use, new term that I learned yesterday, discussion portfolios. I was saying, basically, I was using the name of the tool, the blog, but now I realize what I'm really getting at is a discussion, for them to build a discussion portfolio so that I can see what are the connections they're making between theory and practice. But I will get to that in a minute. I want to show you just briefly what this looks like. I think you can see that a bit. This is the simulation product, and it's really not all that exciting in a way. It's just a fancy messaging system. But what's nice about it is that it has real-time conferencing capability, and it has resources already collected for the students, which is great, because then you don't have to worry that they're going to crazy websites and finding information that's really not very useful. The information's already been gathered for them, which is just really nice. They send each other, it's obviously lends itself wonderfully to asynchronous discussion and asynchronous work, which I think is going to be extremely helpful for this winter term. The same challenges that all of you who went before me are talking about. I want them to be able to do work outside of our meeting. I want to try to abbreviate our meetings a bit so that I'm not getting this glassy-eyed, we've been here for 2.5 hours, I can't take anymore. So this, they'll work in teams, and they will use the negotiation scenario. Some of it will be on Russia, some will be on Norway, Australia, etc. And the exercise that I'm using here is going to be one on an international whaling commission. So it'll help us to get at a a new style of international diplomacy, okay, this notion that there are so many non-governmental organizations involved in issues having to do with the environment, and frankly, strange bedfellows in a negotiation on something like the International Whaling Commission. You have Norway as a major pain in the neck in these negotiations. How often does that happen? So they'll learn lots of interesting things. This represents the just the messaging. So as you can see, if they get on at 3 in the morning, when some of them do their best work, they can look at what their teammates have said to them. This is inter-team communication on the icon site, so I'm hoping that the wiki, this kind of thing, they can use to see what have their teammates done today, what have they accomplished, and add to it. Just see if there's anything else worth showing here. This is the resources. It's also a very good tool for the instructor because I can go in and look at everything that's transpired, how they've responded to messages, how many messages they've sent. I can easily keep track of that. What was the length of their messages, okay? And when the simulation is over, for instance, the last few days of our class, I can open up the community so they can see what was happening. For instance, if Norway was sending Russia messages and Japan didn't know about it, Japan will be able to see that in the last few days of the class. They'll be able to say, oh, they stabbed us in the back. That's why the agreement that we were pushing for fell through. So it's kind of an interesting tool. Escape? No? Oh, here we go. Trying to get back to my PowerPoint slide. What do I have to do here? Reason you need to anticipate their moves in this as well. So there's a lot going on. There's team building, there's collaborative research, there's their ability to communicate within their own team, okay, and then their ability to communicate effectively with the other teams. So as I said here, I hope to use the, I will use the wiki to have them both research Norway, post interesting things for each other on Norway on this topic, and create an original document, which is their policy paper. I use the wiki with a class I'm teaching right now, but I'm not going to bore you with that. It works pretty well though. I find that students are very adept at finding, for example, great little video clips that they'll find a foreign minister making a statement on something that's very relevant. They import that, link to it on the site, and it really enlightens their teammates, it would be in this case. Now, one of the things that my reviewers, both my student reviewer and my faculty peer reviewer pointed out is, well, you need to be careful about assessment tools. You need to sort out how you're going to assess their work. So I put some thought into that and put this slide together to try to deal with that a bit. And I struggle a bit with the terminology that's used for learning, with using some of these tools to learn. So I think I know what I mean here, and I hope I'm using the right terminology. One thing, of course, is to give them credit for authorship. So on their policy paper, they need to initial the parts that they contributed to. On their messaging, okay, within the icon system, they need to initial, JB and LM worked on this message together. They collaborated on it, it went out. If they initial it for me, I know what's happening and who's participating, quantity and quality-wise, which are the two things I'm trying to gauge here as we move through the semester. So credit for authorship. Peer reviews are very important to the team process. They need to know, first of all, from the outset that they'll be given a chance to say, this guy is a free rider, we haven't seen him all week, this kind of thing. So I assure them that the peer review will be important, it will figure in, it will be anonymous, etc. And I find for the most part it keeps them very honest when you're doing a team kind of tool like this. And the quality of reflection, what I'm getting at there really is after we get through the negotiation process, I want them to be able to reflect on the theoretical material that I'm delivering during the term, the abbreviated term in this case, and then the practice that they did, the trial that they did, and be able to measure those two things together, all right? And that's what we call the debriefing phase of this whole process. So for that, I'm thinking in terms of this, using the blog tool and asking them very specific questions other than your own team. One question goes, what team do you think did the best in the negotiations and why, okay? And then certain features that we've talked about in terms of negotiation, teams that use carrots versus teams that use sticks in the negotiation. Which did your team respond more favorably to? Which worked better with you? Okay, so if someone was threatening sanctions, was that ultimately the best tool to get movement from your team? And really have them connect up what they just did with what we learned about in terms of the theory of negotiation. So that's the whole idea to for them to be making these cognitive connections between the practicum, if you will, and the theoretical part of it. Archiving, as I mentioned, is another good feature of this because they can go back in and see, oh, I think this happened because, for instance, students will say, we didn't hear any positive response from Japan after we put forth a very comprehensive proposal. And so at the end, at the debriefing phase, I'll say, well, let's go in and look at how comprehensive your proposal was. We'll bring it up, and they'll look at it. This could be done in the online debriefing blog, or it could be done in class in this type of format that we have here today. They'll look at it and they'll say, oh no, it's not very comprehensive at all. We remembered it as being a much better proposal than it actually is now that we look at it. So we're able to kind of analyze their text, their meaning, was their meaning conveyed? And when we debrief together, the team that it was intended for example, the Japanese team can say, we thought it was insulting. We thought your proposal was absolutely insulting. So there's this opportunity to talk about perceptions, which of course are key to the world of negotiation and diplomacy, perceptions versus intentions. So there's just a lot of richness for kind of analyzing the text and analyzing the process that went into this. So ideally, I'm going to be able to deliver nearly all of this exercise in online form to them in the winter term so that we can utilize our class time more for the theoretical material and the utilize cyberspace, if you will, for this practical hands-on exercise that they're going to be doing.
Do you have any rubrics for these assessment tools that you have?
Now, I haven't put it into rubric form yet, but I do plan on doing that. Yeah, I'm going to, for the next deliverable for this, I'm going to talk about case studies because we also use case studies in this course to bring a lot of the theory to life. And so I'm going to give some thought for that presentation. I'm putting this all into a rubric, particularly the assessment, because again, the feedback, the reviews was definitely the students need to know how is this going to be assessed. One of the things that they, for instance, are immediately worried about is if it's teamwork, what if I do have 2 free riders on my team, and how's that going to affect my team in the negotiations? Is our grade going to be a group grade? So I have to finesse a lot of that, and I have to give them as much information as possible on that. So a rubric's a very good way to present it to them right from the first day of class.
Then you can share with us.
Okay.
Because that's an issue when you use wikis.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people do a lot and some other people don't do anything.
Mhm.
How do you assess that?
Right, that's why I'm trying to get at some combination of quantity and quality. Yeah, but that's tricky.
Just one thing that I do these discussion boards,
Mm-hmm.
I make them grade themselves.
Okay, okay.
And then since I'm monitoring everything, it's foolproof. I mean, it's foolproof.
Yeah, I've done a version of that too, and it's been pretty, they're usually pretty brutally honest about how, did you put
They
in,
have to be.
as much work as your teammates or less, and that type of
And
thing.
anything with a timestamp
Mhm.
helps.
Okay,
Because
okay, that's good too.
if
Yeah.
they could copy and, I have them copy and paste out of the discussion board the entire thing, so I know what they said and when they said it.
Yeah, that's good, that's
And,
good.
and I don't, I also find, well, this is one thing, but
Mhm.
generally just getting them to engage, they've already exceeded my expectation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, okay, okay.
Is there a history function on the Blackboard wiki?
Mm-hmm.
So you could check, I mean, you have them sign their names, but if somebody complains, for example, that so-and-so altered what I had to say, you
Right.
can always go back and check and see.
Oh, okay, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
there is a
Yeah.
history
Okay,
in there.
okay,
You
yeah,
can
that
go
is
back,
good.
because they have all the versions of the page.
Right, right, okay,
So,
good.
and that's something that they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
You just tell them, you know, I can see what you did. Sign your name, I can see what you did, and put a timestamp on it. They're cooked,
Right,
you know,
right.
that's it.
So
Right.
the one thing that I have encountered is they get scared about this, well, what if, so the discussion board that I do is simply, they pick an article, they ask a question, someone has to answer it, and they have to answer somebody else's. They have to do that once a
Right.
week. It's extremely easy. Like, well, what if someone doesn't answer my question? I'm like, well, you guys will all get
Right,
a clear picture of that after you do the first one.
right, right.
Which means that somebody's gonna, you know, not answer yours if you don't answer theirs, and so after the first one, they all get over it, and, you know, they find out that they need to engage one another in order to get, you know, in order to get the grade.
Yeah, when they're beholden to each other, I find that it gets a lot more out of them than when they're just beholden to me.
So if they're
Yeah.
doing teamwork, if there's some way for them to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
that you can actually document who's communicating, who isn't, because if they're not doing the work, they're not communicating with the group, and it's as simple as that.
Right, right, yeah, timestamps
I
are
just
good.
want to make
All
one
right.
other point too, is that, and that is that if you have all of this stuff done on a wiki, if they're doing all this negotiation.
Right.
that if it's the same on Blackboard as it is in the media wiki that I
Right.
use, is they can all see what they're all doing and back channels.
Right, right,
So that, I mean, you were talking about at the end, they get to see what they,
right,
the others are
right.
saying.
They
I
wouldn't be
think
able
on
to see it
wiki-
in that special, negotiation software though. But
Oh,
they would
okay.
be able to see what their teammates are doing, in terms of preparation, if that's what you're referring
Well,
to.
no, I was thinking
Yeah.
that France would be able to look at Japan, and France and Japan were both on the wiki.
Oh, I see what you're saying,
And
yeah,
France would be
yeah.
able to figure out what Japan's up to,
Right, right, right.
and that,
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we're getting kind of long.
she said it's
Did you
espionage.
use something
It
else?
is Spanish.
Okay.
Well, it's part of international relations.